What is up, y'all? I am so excited to do this video because this is a topic that I have been wanting to talk about for a long time, I'm not gonna lie. But that being said, I also just really want to clarify that I want this to be the beginning of a conversation. I do not consider myself an expert in any way, and I know that I have a lot of learning and growing to do on my own journey within this topic and what it means to me. So I really just want to emphasize that I see this more as food for thought, but I'm a strong believer that you don't need to be an expert in something to talk about it and to share it, especially if you can acknowledge that you're not an expert and you are someone that is also learning. Also, if you're new here, hi, hello, my name is Sydney Rain, and on this channel, we're just living life. We do a couple different things, but mainly I like to center a lot of my content around themes of nature, emotional growth. I do these earthy girl vlogs, which I guess technically is what this is today, as well as general health and wellness. I do a little bit of lock care, and yeah, we just live in life, so I can't always promise you consistency, but I can promise authenticity, which I think is something that I find much more valuable on this channel. So yeah, so stick around. Okay, so the topic that I want to talk about today is environmentalism, and specifically within that, Black environmentalism. And I'm not gonna lie, I actually tried making this video yesterday and I found myself really stuck in my words. And so hopefully today I can really just lay it out and share my thoughts and feelings without feeling so burdened to make sure that everything I say is perfect and eloquently said. And as much as I would love for you to watch this video in its entirety, I will have a lot of resources down below in the description as well as timestamps. But of course, I encourage you to watch the full video. I wanted to include timestamps just to make it easier to come back and reference the video, but I think every aspect of this video is valuable and worth a listen, of course. So yeah, let's get into it. Had to get my phone because I have a whole agenda for this video today and I gotta make sure that I touch all the pieces because I'll be so mad if I go back and edit and I forgot to talk about something. So let's start with the basics. What is environmentalism? Environmentalism is a social, ethical, and scientific movement that aims to protect the environment from the effects of human harm. And that is a very simplified definition that is literally right off of Google. But I feel like that is enough because it really does just encompass what environmentalism is. And this movement can be achieved through many different mediums. A lot of times it looks like grassroots initiatives, it can look like nonprofits, it can look like individual activism and advocacy. Also, very importantly, it could look like policy change and policy making. And the main goal is to make sure that the relationship we have with nature and the relationship between humanity and nature maintains a level of balance, or in our case, a level of protection and awareness when it comes to the impacts that we have already caused to the planet and the natural world. I think there's definitely a degree of powerlessness that exists within those conversations, especially because we ourselves are not to blame for a lot of the things that these bigger corporations are doing to impact the environment and directly threaten the natural world. So there is this sense of powerlessness that exists, but regardless of what we're fighting against, I do believe that there are things we can be doing, like speaking up and advocating and finding ways in our lives to connect with nature and grow that empathy and really make change locally and on the ground level that I think can snowball and eventually impact policy and really show that we can have influence. It's about taking accountability at a very local level, and that is why the topic of Black environmentalism is so important to me and so interesting, because it takes this concept of environmentalism and it adds more nuance to the existence of that movement and what it realistically means for people like me and you. The Black environmentalism movement takes into consideration the intersection of race and the environment, which, if you're not familiar with the term intersectionality, it was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, who I believe spoke about it first in critical race theory. I was really fortunate enough in college to pick up a minor in ethnic studies, where I was assigned a lot of texts from people like Kimberly Crenshaw and Bell Hooks, and I think reading their work created a lot of context for a lot of topics. And so when I joined a conservation corps earlier this year and became a lot more familiar with environmentalism and the world of ecology and environmental science, being able to find a movement within that format that really spoke to those nuances and really hone in on how different aspects of our identity intersect with environmental issues is what really planted the seed for me to want to explore this concept. To be honest, I think it gave a lot more purpose to the things that I was already doing, which was advocating for Black and brown folks to be outdoors and a more diverse group of people in the conversation when it comes to outdoor spaces and restoration and protecting the natural environment. And one thing that I think Black environmentalism does really well is it has begun the process of shifting this concept of conservation to a much more actionable process of environmental justice. And more than anything, I think it really is just a narrative shift in allowing space for those social aspects of environmentalism to be taken with the same amount of gravity and consideration as other aspects. We can't isolate or remove racism, capitalism, and anti-Blackness from any aspect of these conversations because they are all interconnected and intertwined, and being able to address that and acknowledge it, I think, is what will help us actually begin to not only work together but create real solutions. And I think it's interesting that when we talk about Black culture and the influence and the impacts that are felt around the world, Black environmentalism and environmental justice don't seem to be as celebrated as I think they should be, considering that people like Robert D. Bullard exist and people that have dedicated their lives and studies and time and energy to talk about these issues and to really create policy change, create social, economic change. And here's the part when I inject my own personal opinion, so please take it with a grain of salt, but I think, to me, as someone who considers themselves an advocate for seeing Black and brown faces outdoors and in these natural spaces and really taking ownership for these natural spaces, I think it would be unfair to not acknowledge the history behind Blackness in these natural spaces, as well as all the barriers that exist that actively work against us being in those spaces. That's why I think it is so important to talk about being outdoors and pushing to be in those spaces, because I think one thing that a lot of these movements heavily rely on that isn't talked about is the fact that they rely on a lot of love and they rely on a lot of empathy. And how can we feel empathetic and feel love for a movement if we ourselves don't really feel that connection to it? And I think there's no coincidence that at the same time that we were pushed out of these natural spaces and told we weren't welcome, we were also being pushed into inner city communities, cutting off our access and telling us that there are other things that we should be paying attention to, and being outside, being outdoors, and spending our time there is a luxury directly impacts our ability to be in the conversation. And I don't think that's unintentional. There's a video on this channel that I made in the past, and I believe it's titled Blackness in Natural Spaces, and I really encourage y'all to go and watch that after watching this video, just because I think there are also a lot of things that have been internalized into our community that perpetuate certain narratives and beliefs about the outdoors and outdoor spaces. But yeah, like I said, I don't feel like I am an expert in this topic. All I could hope is some of the things that I am saying have resonated with you and make you interested to do your own research and to really learn about this movement of Black environmentalism. And if I'm being completely honest, the term Black environmentalism is not even something that I was aware of until this year. One of the reasons I even looked specifically into Black environmentalism was because when I was in that conservation corps, at the time it felt like I was the only Black passing person that was even in the conservation corps. And so feeling isolated in that space really pushed me to want to do research and want to see if there was a movement and a group of folks out there that not only stood for these things but looked like me and reflected my experiences and what I was going through even existing in the world of environmentalism. And I wanted to share this with you because in the past year I feel like I have began to build a community of people who have the same thoughts and opinions and emotions towards these movements. And sometimes I honestly forget that there are a lot of people that are not having these conversations, that want to have these conversations, and people that were just like me who, if you asked me a year ago if I knew what Black environmentalism was, I would have been like, no, but that sounds interesting. That sounds like something that I would be interested in. And I think sometimes when you do form a community, you sort of forget how valuable that community is. You forget that there are people outside of it who don't know those concepts and wouldn't feel like you're preaching to the choir if you were to talk about these things. And so that's why I wanted to make this video. And if you haven't already, I would definitely check out the description below, because I created a list of accounts that I follow online that help keep this conversation going. I think apart from doing your own research and having your own passions and interests towards something, it is important to surround yourself with people that are doing the work as well. Following this handful of accounts on Instagram have really helped shape my algorithm to continue to show me people that have these same concerns, and it has really pushed me to continue to think about these things, even while on social media and quote unquote trying to escape the reality of life. Personally, I believe that the media that we consume and the people we are consuming it from really impact the ways that we view this world and our reality. And so I always try to make sure that my social media reflects that as genuinely as it possibly can. Yes, the internet is fake, but here I am, a real person talking about a very real issue. And I think there are so many people online that choose to use their platform to advocate for real life issues and to really push the narrative of what it means to be an influencer online. Karishma Climate Girl, Green Girl Leah, Intersectional Environmentalism, Black Girl Environmentalist, We Are Neutral, and Slow Factory. These are all great resources in my opinion. And one thing that I love about a lot of those accounts as well is not only do you see their feed, but they do a lot of partnerships with smaller groups, specific minority groups that are also trying to make waves in their own personal communities. So I think those are great resources if you're someone that is interested in this topic, just to kind of familiarize yourself with this world and get a realistic view of what people are doing and how they're doing it to try and influence change. I also did link an article that had a very lengthy list of environmentalists that I think are worth your time to go and research yourself. I'm so new to this world and I'm really bad with names, so I'm not even going to try to name some people off. But when I first started researching Black environmentalism, Robert D. Bullard was the first name that popped up. He is considered the father of environmental justice, and he himself have put out a lot of books that specifically do with how to tackle this conversation of race, class, environmental issues, location, and he has done a lot of work within policy making to really help and support the Black community. And as far as what can be done right now as someone who maybe feels like they don't have anything to offer or to give, I would encourage you to do your research about what is going on locally on the ground for you. And that could mean nonprofits, it could look like maybe even just like unofficial interest groups. I think the biggest thing that we have in our favor is community and sharing that mutual love and empathy for the places that raised us and places that we do have that emotional connection to. And I think that's something that is so beautiful about community, because once that happens at a local level, it is a lot easier to find each other and to draw those connections and to really create a network. And I think that is when we really start to see the influence that we can all make. All right, y'all, I think I have said all that I want to say for today. And so I think I want to close the video out here. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. It means a lot to me. And whether or not you're familiar with this concept of Black environmentalism, please comment below and let me know what you think about the movement. If you are someone that's familiar, what are your thoughts? What are your opinions? Talk to me. This is supposed to be a conversation. I don't even want to say I'm a teacher, but I know for sure that I am also a student, and this is meant to be something that's collaborative. So please let me know in the comments what you think, any thoughts, opinions, feelings, emotions. I tend to be quite exclusive in my phrasing sometimes because I want to make it really clear that there is an audience that I am trying to reach, but ultimately this is a very inclusive conversation and it is meant for anyone who is willing to listen or would like to be a part of it. And so that being said, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video, and if you haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Being able to talk about this today has inspired a lot of other videos that I really want to put out in the future, and I am planning as we speak. So I'm really looking forward to that, and until next time, happy healing. All right, bye y'all.